The cold metal hull of the abandoned ship floated in the darkness of space like a dead whale in an endless ocean. Captain Zix pressed his six-fingered hand against the viewing window of his exploration vessel and stared at the strange craft they had discovered. In all his 40 years of service with the Galactic Federation, he had never seen anything quite like it. "Sir, we've finished scanning the derelict," announced Lieutenant Quinda from her station. Her blue skin flickered with nervous patterns of light, a clear sign she was excited about their find. The design matches ancient records from the human civilization that disappeared 200 years ago. Zix nodded slowly. He had heard stories about humans during his academy training, but they were little more than legends now. According to the old files, humans had been a primitive species that barely managed to leave their home planet before vanishing completely from known space. Most scholars believe they had probably destroyed themselves in some foolish war, as young species often did. "Any signs of life?" the captain asked. "That's the strange part, sir. Most of the ship is dead, but there's one section still showing power readings. It appears to be some kind of preservation facility." Dr. Veltar looked up from his medical scanner with interest. The thin, gray-skinned alien had spent years studying extinct species, and the chance to examine actual human remains was incredibly exciting for him. "Captain, with your permission, I'd like to lead a boarding party to investigate. This could be the scientific discovery of the century." Within an hour, a small team had crossed over to the human vessel. The airlock systems were primitive but functional, and they managed to gain entry without too much difficulty. The corridors inside were built for creatures much larger than most Federation species. Zixif had to stretch his neck to its full length just to see properly, and even then he felt small in the oversized hallways. "These humans must have been giants," whispered Engineer Crixton as they made their way deeper into the ship. His forearms waved nervously as he examined the massive doorways and thick metal walls. "Look at the size of everything." "What kind of world produces creatures this large?" They followed the power readings to a section deep in the ship's belly. The doors here were marked with symbols none of them could read, but the meaning became clear when they stepped inside. Dozens of glass containers lined the walls, each one designed to hold a living being in suspended animation. Most of the containers were dark and cold, their occupants long dead from system failures over the centuries, but one container still glowed with soft blue light. Dr. Veltar approached it carefully, his scanner beeping softly as it analyzed what lay inside. "Fascinating," he murmured. "The preservation system is still functioning after all this time. Primitive technology, but surprisingly effective." Through the frosted glass, they could see the outline of a large figure floating in thick liquid. The creature was easily twice the size of most Federation citizens, with thick limbs and a broad chest that suggested incredible physical power. "Is it alive?" asked Captain Zixith. "Very much so. Brain activity is minimal, as expected in cryosleep, but all vital signs are strong. Remarkably strong, actually. I've never seen readings quite like these." Dr. Veltar paused his scanning and looked up at the captain with wide eyes. "Sir, according to my instruments, this creature's bone density is off the charts. Its muscle mass is incredible. If these readings are accurate, this single being could probably overpower our entire security team." Lieutenant Quinda's skin patterns shifted to a worried orange color. "Should we leave it alone? I mean, if it's that dangerous. "Nonsense," Dr. Veltar interrupted. "According to historical records, humans were a peaceful species. They disappeared because they were too weak to survive in the galaxy, not because they were aggressive. This is probably just an unusual individual, perhaps some kind of laborer bred for heavy work." Captain Zix considered their options. Federation law required them to help any being they found in distress, regardless of species. Besides, the scientific value of a living human specimen was enormous. "Doctor, can you safely revive it?" "I believe so. The cryo system is remarkably well designed. It should be a simple matter of gradually warming the subject and introducing the proper chemical compounds to restart normal biological functions." The revival process took 6 hours. During that time, the boarding party learned more about their discovery. The ship's computer systems were primitive but contained enough readable data to piece together the story. The vessel had been part of something called the New Frontier Colonization Project. It had been carrying 200 settlers to establish a human colony on a distant world when something had gone catastrophically wrong with the ship's engines. The crew had managed to put everyone into cryosleep before the life support systems failed, hoping that rescue would come quickly. Instead, the ship had drifted in space for over 2 centuries while the rest of humanity vanished from the galaxy. Only one cryopod had continued to function properly throughout the long journey. As the revival process neared completion, Dr. Veltar monitored his instruments with growing amazement. "This is incredible," he said to Captain Zixt H. "Most species suffer severe muscle atrophy after extended cryosleep. This human shows almost no degradation at all. If anything, his physical condition seems perfect." The liquid in the cryopod began to drain, and the figure inside stirred slightly. Dr. Veltar made final adjustments to the atmospheric mixture in the chamber, ensuring it would be safe for the human to breathe. "Here we go," the doctor announced. The glass lid of the pod slid open with a soft hiss. The figure inside took a deep, steady breath and opened his eyes. They were brown eyes, warm and intelligent, set in a face that looked surprisingly young despite the centuries of sleep. The human sat up slowly, water dripping from his short dark hair. He looked around the chamber with calm curiosity, taking in the strange aliens surrounding him without any sign of fear or panic. When his gaze settled on Captain Zixt H, he spoke in a deep, steady voice. "Well, this is new. How long was I out, and where's my crew?" Dr. Veltar nearly dropped his scanner in surprise. Most beings required weeks to recover from extended cryosleep, suffering from confusion, weakness, and disorientation. This human appeared to be completely alert and functional within moments of revival. You're awake," the doctor stammered. "Yeah, seems that way." The human swung his legs over the edge of the pod and stood up. The aliens all took an involuntary step backward as his full size became apparent. He was massive by their standards, easily 7 feet tall with shoulders broader than some of their doorways, but it wasn't just his size that made them nervous. There was something about the way he moved, a fluid grace that suggested incredible physical power held in perfect control. When he stretched his arms and rolled his shoulders, they could see muscles shifting beneath his skin like steel cables. "I'm Jake Morrison," the human said, extending one enormous hand toward Captain Zixith. "I was the construction foreman for the colony project. Thanks for waking me up, but I'm guessing from your faces that something's gone wrong." Captain Zix stared at the offered hand, unsure whether it was safe to take it. The appendage looked like it could crush his skull without effort. Jake noticed their hesitation and lowered his hand with a slight frown. "Okay, let me guess. You? Folks have never seen a human before, and somebody told you we were dangerous or something." "Look, I know I'm big, but I'm not going to hurt anybody. I just want to know what happened to my people and figure out how to get home." "About that," Dr. Veltar said carefully, "there's something you need to know about your people, Jake Morrison. Your species ... gone. Humanity disappeared from known space over 200 years ago. No one knows what happened to them." Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. The aliens watched his face carefully, expecting him to break down or become violent. Instead, he simply nodded. 200 years, he said quietly. "That explains a lot." "So you folks are what, the people who run things now?" "We represent the Galactic Federation," Captain Zixt H explained. "We're explorers and peacekeepers. And you found me floating out here and decided to wake me up." "That was decent of you." Jake looked around the cryo chamber again, his expression sad but controlled. "I'm guessing all the other pods failed over the years?" "I'm afraid so." "You're the only survivor." Jake closed his eyes for a moment, and the aliens could see him struggling with emotions they couldn't understand. When he opened them again, his voice was steady. "Well, then, it looks like I'm going to need to figure out how to make a new life." "In your galaxy?" Think you folks could use an extra pair of hands? Dr. Veltar led Jake Morrison to the medical bay aboard the Harmony's Edge, his instruments beeping constantly as they recorded data about the human's remarkable physical condition. The other crew members they passed in the corridor stopped their work to stare at the massive figure walking calmly through their ship. "I need to run some basic tests," Dr. Veltar explained as they entered the pristine white medical facility. "Standard procedure for anyone coming out of extended cryo sleep. Most beings need weeks of treatment to recover properly." Jake nodded and sat down on the examination table, which creaked under his weight despite being designed to handle the heaviest known Federation species. "Doc, I feel fine, but you're the expert. Do whatever you need to do." The first test was a simple blood draw. Dr. Veltar prepared his standard needle, the same one he used for all species in the Federation. When he tried to insert it into Jake's arm, the needle bent and broke against the human's skin. "That's odd," the doctor muttered, reaching for a heavier-duty needle designed for the thick-skinned Gorlick species. This one managed to penetrate Jake's skin, but barely. "Everything okay, Doc?" Jake asked, watching with mild interest as Dr. Veltar struggled with the procedure. "Your skin is remarkably tough. Much tougher than our records indicated for humans." The doctor managed to draw a small sample of blood and immediately ran it through his analyzer. Within minutes, the machine was producing results that made his eyes widen in disbelief. Jake's blood contained oxygen-carrying cells that were 3 times more efficient than any known species. His white blood cell count suggested an immune system so powerful it could probably fight off diseases that would kill most other beings instantly. Even more surprising, his blood showed signs of rapid healing ability that bordered on the impossible. "This can't be right," Dr. Veltar whispered to himself, running the test again. "What's wrong?" Jake asked. "Nothing's wrong, exactly. It's just that your biology is far more advanced than we expected. According to these readings, you could survive in environments that would be lethal to most Federation species." Jake shrugged. "I always was pretty healthy. My mom used to say I had the constitution of an ox, whatever that means." Next came the physical strength tests. Dr. Veltar attached sensors to Jake's arms and chest, then connected him to a machine designed to measure lifting capacity. The device was calibrated for the strongest known species in the galaxy. "Just, squeeze this handle as hard as you can," the doctor instructed. Jake wrapped his fingers around the metal grip and squeezed gently. The machine immediately maxed out its readings and began smoking from overload. "I think your machine is broken, Doc," Jake said, releasing the handle before any real damage occurred. Dr. Veltar stared at the ruined testing equipment in shock. "That machine was rated to measure up to 10,000 pounds of pressure. You destroyed it without even trying." 10,000 pounds, that's it? Jake looked genuinely surprised. "Back home, that was just a warm-up weight at the gym. My buddy Carl could deadlift twice that much, and he was just a weekend warrior." The doctor's hands shook as he made notes on his electronic pad. If Jake was telling the truth, then humans were not the weak, primitive species that Federation records described. They were something far more powerful than anyone had imagined. "Let's try some cardiovascular tests," Dr. Veltar said. Hoping to find something normal about human physiology, he connected Jake to a machine that monitored heart rate and breathing during exercise. The test started with simple walking on a treadmill, then gradually increased in speed and difficulty. Most Federation species would be exhausted within 20 minutes of moderate exercise. Jake ran at full speed for 2 hours without showing any signs of fatigue. His heart rate barely increased, and his breathing remained steady and calm. When Dr. Veltar finally stopped the test, Jake wasn't even sweating. "That was nice," Jake said, stepping off the treadmill. "Felt good to get the blood flowing again after 200 years. Got anything more challenging?" Dr. Veltar was beyond shocked now. He was entering the realm of terror. "Jake, do you understand what you just did? You just ran at speeds that would kill most beings for a duration that should be impossible, without showing any strain at all. Really?" "Huh. I was taking it pretty easy since I just woke up." Didn't want to overdo it, you know. The doctor excused himself and hurried to find Captain Zixt H. He found the captain in his ready room, reviewing reports from their exploration mission. "Sir, we have a problem," Dr. Veltar announced, his voice shaking with excitement and fear. "What kind of problem, Doctor?" "It's the human, Jake Morrison. Sir, everything we know about his species is wrong. Completely, utterly wrong." Captain Zix set down his electronic pad and gave the doctor his full attention. "Explain." "According to our historical records, humans were a weak, primitive species that barely managed to achieve spaceflight. They were supposed to be average in every measurable way. But Jake Morrison is not average by any definition. He's stronger than our strongest species, faster than our fastest, more durable than our most heavily armored warriors." "That seems unlikely, Doctor." "Perhaps this individual is some kind of genetic anomaly. That's what I thought at first. But, sir, he keeps talking about other humans as if they were all like him. He mentioned a friend who was stronger than he is. He talked about his grandmother as if she was tougher than our security chief. If he's telling the truth, then humans weren't a weak species that died out. They were something else entirely." Captain Zixth considered this information carefully. "Have you asked him directly about human capabilities?" "Not yet, sir. I wanted to report to you first." "Bring him to the bridge. I want to speak with him myself." 20 minutes later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Harmony's edge, looking around with professional interest at the alien technology surrounding him. Despite being in an environment completely foreign to his experience, he appeared calm and confident. "Nice ship you have here, Captain," Jake said. "The engineering looks solid. Who built her?" The Harmony's Edge was constructed at the Rigel shipyards by our finest engineers," Captain Zixith replied. "Jake Morrison, I need to ask you some questions about your species." "Sure, ask away." "Dr. Veltar has been testing your physical capabilities, and the results are quite surprising. According to our records, humans were not particularly strong or durable compared to other spacefaring species." Jake laughed, a deep, rich sound that filled the bridge. "Captain, I don't know who gave you those records, but they were either lying or completely misinformed. Humans are tough. We have to be. We come from a world that's been trying to kill us since day one." "What do you mean?" "Earth is a death world, Captain. Gravity that would crush most beings, weather that changes without warning, predators that hunt in packs, diseases that adapt faster than we can cure them. Everything on our planet evolved to be strong and fast and mean just to survive another day." Lieutenant Quinda's skin patterns shifted to deep purple, a sign of extreme nervousness. "Are you saying all humans are like you?" "Like me, Captain? I'm nothing special back home. I was just a construction worker. I built buildings and fixed roads. There are humans who make me look weak by comparison. Professional athletes, soldiers, people who dedicate their lives to physical training." Engineer Crixton waved all four of his arms in agitation. "That's impossible. If humans were that powerful, why did they disappear? What could have threatened them?" Jake's expression grew serious. "That's a good question. From what you're telling me, humanity vanished right around the time my colony ship left Earth. That wasn't an accident. Something big was happening back. Then something that made the government recall all the colony missions." "What kind of something?" Captain Zixith asked. "I don't know for sure, but there were rumors before we left. Stories about signals from outside the galaxy, about things moving in the dark spaces between stars. Command was worried about something, worried enough to pull back all our expansion efforts and focus on defense." The bridge fell silent as the implications of Jake's words sank in. If humans were as powerful as Jake suggested, and if something had been threatening them enough to make them disappear from known space, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? "Jake," Captain Zixith said carefully, "would you be willing to help us understand more about your species? This information could be vital to the Federation." "Of course, Captain. You folks saved my life. The least I can do is answer your questions, and maybe lend a hand around the ship while we figure out what happened to my people." As Jake left the bridge to return to his quarters, the senior staff remained behind to discuss what they had learned. Sir, if he's telling the truth about human capabilities, then we may have been completely wrong about why they disappeared, Dr. Veltar said quietly. What do you mean? We always assumed they were too weak to survive. But what if they were? Too strong? What if they left known space not because they were fleeing from something, but because they were going to fight something too dangerous for the rest of us to handle? Captain Zixis stared out at the stars, wondering what kind of threat could make beings like Jake Morrison abandon their homes and disappear into the darkness beyond the galactic rim. Jake Morrison had been aboard the Harmony's Edge for 5 days when the first real incident happened. The alien crew had grown somewhat used to his presence, though they still stared whenever he walked through the corridors. His massive frame and calm confidence made even the ship's security chief nervous. Captain Zixith had assigned Jake to work with the engineering team, hoping that keeping him busy would help him adjust to his new situation. Engineer Crixton was still skeptical about having a primitive human help with advanced Federation technology, but he was curious enough to give Jake simple tasks. We need to replace the primary power coupling in Section 7. Crixton explained to his team during the morning briefing. It's a big job. The coupling weighs about 800 pounds and will need the heavy lifting equipment to move it safely. Jake looked up from the technical manual he had been reading. 800 pounds? That's not too bad. Where do you need it moved? From the storage bay to the engine room, but Jake, you don't understand. This isn't something you can just pick up and carry. We need mechanical assistance and at least 4 crew members to guide it safely. Mind if I take a look at it first? Crixton shrugged his 4 shoulders. If you want, but I'm telling you, it's impossible for one being to handle alone. They walked to the storage bay where the new power coupling sat in its protective crate. Jake examined the device carefully, running his hands along its edges and checking the weight distribution. The other engineers watched with amusement, expecting him to quickly realize his mistake. Looks pretty straightforward, Jake said. He bent down, wrapped his arms around the massive device, and lifted it cleanly off the floor. The laughter died. Instantly, Jake held the 800-pound coupling as easily as another being might hold a small box. Which way to the engine room? Engineer Crixton's mouth fell open. His assistants backed away in shock. One of them dropped the tools he had been carrying. That's impossible, Crixton whispered. The gravitational field strength alone should make that weigh over 1,000 pounds in this section of the ship. It does feel a little heavy, Jake admitted. Good thing I stretched this morning. He carried the coupling through 3 sections of the ship, down 2 flights of stairs, and into the engine room without stopping to rest. When he set it down in exactly the right position, he wasn't even breathing hard. Word of Jake's feat spread through the ship within hours. By evening, half the crew had found excuses to walk past the engine room to see the human, who could lift things that should require machines. But the real test came 3 days later. The Harmony's Edge was conducting a routine survey of a gas giant's moons when disaster struck. A micrometeor shower, too small to detect until too late, punched through the ship's outer hull and ruptured. A plasma conduit in the engineering section, alarms blared throughout the ship as toxic gas began pouring into the engineering bay. The automatic safety system sealed the section immediately, but Engineer Crixton and 2 of his assistants were trapped inside with a cloud of deadly vapor that would kill most Federation species within minutes. Emergency response team to engineering. Captain Zix announced over the ship's communication system. We have crew members trapped in a contaminated environment. The response team rushed to the sealed engineering section, but the safety protocols were clear. No one could enter the contaminated area without full environmental suits, and it would take at least 20 minutes to prepare the equipment and create a safe entry point. Jake arrived at the scene, just as Dr. Veltar was explaining the situation to Captain Zix. The plasma leak is releasing concentrated xenon compounds, the doctor said urgently. Exposure to those gases is fatal to all known Federation species. Even with environmental suits, we're looking at extreme risk. How long can the trapped crew survive? Captain Zixith asked. Minutes at most. Maybe 5 or 6 if they found somewhere to hide from the worst of the contamination? Jake stepped forward. Captain, what needs to be done to stop the leak? The conduit needs to be manually sealed from the inside. But Jake, you don't understand. Those gases will kill you instantly. Maybe not. I'd like to try. Dr. Veltar grabbed Jake's arm. This is suicide. Human biology may be remarkable, but you can't survive in a toxic environment like that. Jake gently removed the doctor's hand from his arm. Doc, back on Earth, I worked construction in some pretty nasty places. Chemical plants, refineries, places where the air could kill you if you breathed wrong. I learned to hold my breath for a long time. Before anyone could stop him, Jake had opened the emergency access panel to the sealed engineering section. Toxic green gas poured out into the corridor, sending the other crew members running for safety. Jake took 3 deep breaths, filling his lungs completely, then stepped into the contaminated zone and sealed the door behind him. On the bridge, Captain Zixith watched the environmental monitors with growing horror. The gas concentrations in the engineering section were lethal to any known life form. Even the ship's emergency robots couldn't function in that environment. How long has he been in there? Lieutenant Quenda asked, her skin flickering with worried patterns. 12 minutes, Dr. Veltar replied, staring at his chronometer in disbelief. This is impossible. No being can hold their breath for 12 minutes while performing physical labor in a toxic environment. 15 minutes passed, then 20. The crew gathered around the monitors, watching in stunned silence as Jake's life signs remained steady. And strong. At 23 minutes, the environmental alarm suddenly stopped. The gas readings began dropping rapidly as the ship's air purification systems cleared the contamination. 3 minutes later, Jake's voice came over the communication. System. Engineering section is secure, Captain. The leak is sealed and I found your missing crew members. They're alive, but they need medical attention. The emergency medical team rushed into engineering as soon as the air was declared safe. They found Engineer Crixton and his assistants unconscious, but breathing in a sealed maintenance closet where they had taken shelter. Jake stood nearby, checking the repair he had made to the plasma conduit. Jake, Dr. Veltar said as he examined the rescued crew members, how did you survive in there for over 20 minutes? Wasn't too bad, Jake replied casually. The trick is to stay calm and not panic. Panicking uses up your oxygen faster. But the toxic gases ... Yeah, they smelled pretty awful. Good thing I didn't need to breathe while I was working. Dr. Veltar ran his medical scanner over Jake, looking for signs of chemical poisoning or lung damage. The readings showed nothing abnormal. Jake's vital signs were perfectly normal, as if he had just taken a pleasant walk instead of surviving in an environment that should have killed him instantly. That evening, Captain Zixith called Jake to his ready room for a private conversation. Jake, what you did today was incredible. You saved 3 lives and prevented serious damage to the ship, but I need to understand something. How is it possible for any being to do what you did? Jake sat down in the chair across from the captain's desk, which groaned under his weight. Captain, I keep trying to tell you folks I'm not special. Any human could have done what I did today. Any human? Well, maybe not any human. Some of my people are pretty soft, especially the ones who live in the cities and never do physical work. But most humans who work dangerous jobs learn to handle situations like this. Captain Zixith leaned forward. Jake, I've been thinking about what you said before, about humans coming from a death world. Can you tell me more about Earth? Sure, what do you want to know? Everything. I'm beginning to think we never understood your species at all. Jake smiled and settled back in his chair. Well, Captain, Earth is a beautiful place, but it's also incredibly dangerous. We have weather systems that can level cities, earthquakes that split the ground open, volcanoes that block out the sun for months. The animals range from tiny insects that can kill you with one bite to massive predators that hunt in coordinated packs. How do humans survive in such conditions? We adapt. We get stronger, faster, smarter, we work together. We build tools and weapons and cities that can withstand anything the planet throws at us. Every human child learns to survive in conditions that would terrify most other species. And you consider yourself average among your people? Jake laughed. Captain, I was just a guy who built buildings. There are humans who make me look like a weakling. Professional soldiers, athletes, explorers who push themselves to limits you wouldn't believe possible. Captain Zixith felt a chill run through his body. If Jake Morrison was truly representative of baseline human capabilities, then the Federation had been completely wrong about humanity's place in the galaxy. And if there were humans who were even more capable than Jake, what did that mean for everyone else? Jake, one more question. If humans are as capable as you suggest, why did your species disappear? What could possibly threaten beings like you? Jake's expression grew serious. That's what I've been wondering about, Captain. From what you've told me, humanity vanished right when we were expanding into deep space. That timing isn't a coincidence. Something was out there. Something big enough and dangerous enough that the human government decided to pull back all our colonies and face it directly. What kind of threat could do that? Jake Morrison had been aboard the Harmony's Edge for 3 weeks when the pirates found them. The ship's long-range sensors detected the approaching vessels while Jake was helping engineer Crixton repair a damaged ventilation system in the lower decks. All crew to battle stations? Captain Zixith's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. We have multiple unknown vessels approaching at high speed. Jake looked up from the circuit panel he had been fixing. Battle stations? Are we under attack? Sounds like it, Crixton replied, his forearms moving nervously as he gathered his tools. We should get to the emergency shelters immediately. On the bridge, Lieutenant Quinda was reading the sensor displays with growing alarm. Captain, I count 12 ships in attack formation. The design matches known Krekstar raider vessels. Captain Zixith felt his blood turn cold. The Krekstar were the most feared pirates in this sector of space. They were known for their brutality and their practice of selling captured crews into slavery in the Outer Rim markets. Are they hailing us? The captain asked. Yes, sir. Incoming transmission. The main screen flickered to life, showing the scarred face of a Krekstar commander. The alien's scaled skin was marked with ritual scars, and his small black eyes gleamed with cruel intelligence. Federation vessel, you will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Resist and we will destroy you. Captain Zixith knew he had no choice. The Harmony's Edge was a science vessel with minimal weapons and shields. Against a full Krekstar raiding fleet, they had no chance of survival. Understood, the captain replied. We surrender. Jake arrived on the bridge just as the transmission ended. He had heard the conversation from the corridor and didn't like what he was hearing. Captain, who were those friendly folks? Krekstar pirates, the most dangerous raiders in known space. They're going to board us and take the crew as slaves. Jake frowned. Slaves? That doesn't sound very nice. Nice has nothing to do with it, Jake. We have no choice. Their fleet could destroy us in minutes. How many ships did you say they have? 12 vessels, including a heavy dreadnought that serves as their flagship. Jake walked over to the sensor display and studied the formation of approaching ships. Which one is their command ship? Lieutenant Quinda pointed to the largest vessel. On the screen, that's the dreadnought. It carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. And that's where their leader would be? Yes, but Jake, what are you thinking? That ship has shields that could stop a meteor and weapons that could vaporize this entire vessel. Jake was already walking toward the exit. Captain, how many escape pods does this ship carry? Several, but they're not designed for combat. They're just basic evacuation craft with minimal life support. That's all I need. Just point me toward the biggest ship, and I'll take care of this problem. The bridge crew stared at him in shocked silence. Dr. Veltar was the first to find his voice. Jake, you can't be serious. That's a Krekstar dreadnought with over 300 crew members, all armed and trained for combat. Doc, I've dealt with bullies before. They're all the same, no matter what planet they come from. Captain Zixith stepped forward. Jake, I can't. let you do this. It's suicide. Captain, with all due respect, I don't see that you have many other options. You can surrender and let your crew become slaves, or you can let me try to solve this problem the direct way. What exactly are you planning to do? Jake smiled, and for the first time since they had met him, the aliens saw something dangerous in his expression. I'm going to have a conversation with their leadership about proper manners. Before anyone could stop him, Jake was heading for the escape pod bay. Captain Zixif tried to follow, but Jake moved so quickly through the corridors that the alien couldn't keep up. By the time the bridge crew reached the pod bay, Jake had already sealed himself inside one of the small evacuation craft and was preparing to launch. Jake, don't do this, Dr. Veltar pleaded through the communication system. Those pirates will kill you before you even reach their ship. Maybe, but I doubt it. They'll be curious enough to let me get close. Pirates are always interested in anything unusual, and a human showing up in an escape pod definitely qualifies as unusual. Their weapons will destroy the pod instantly. Not if I'm flying evasively. These little ships are pretty maneuverable. With that, Jake launched himself directly at the Krekstar fleet. The bridge crew watched in horror as the tiny escape pod streaked across space toward the massive dreadnought on the Krekstar flagship. Commander Grickstar was preparing his boarding parties when his weapons officer reported something unexpected. Sir, there's a small craft approaching from the Federation vessel. It appears to be an escape pod. An escape pod? Are they trying to flee? No, sir, it's heading directly for us. Single occupant. Commander Grickstar studied the tactical display with interest. In all his years of piracy, he had never seen anything like this. No sane being would fly directly at a Krekstar dreadnought in an unarmed escape pod. Let it approach. I want to see what kind of fool thinks they can challenge us. The escape pod slipped through the dreadnought's defensive screen without being fired upon. Jake piloted the small craft directly into the ship's main docking bay and set it down as gently as landing on a calm lake. 50 armed Krekstar warriors surrounded the pod as Jake opened the hatch and stepped out. The pirates were large, fierce-looking aliens with thick scales and sharp claws, but Jake was still bigger than any of them. I'd like to speak with whoever's in charge, Jake said calmly. The warriors looked at each other in confusion. They had expected a desperate Federation officer begging for mercy, not this massive, calm creature making polite requests. Commander Grickstar arrived in the docking bay with his personal guard. He was the largest Krekstar on the ship, covered in ritual scars that told of countless victories in battle. I am Commander Grickstar. Who are you to come aboard my ship and make demands? My name is Jake Morrison. I'm not making demands, just a request. I'd like you to leave that Federation ship alone. Grickstar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the docking bay. You think you can negotiate with me? You're outnumbered. 300 to 1 on my own ship. Commander, I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to explain what's going to happen. You're going to call off your attack, apologize to Captain Zixt H for the inconvenience, and find a new line of work that doesn't involve hurting innocent people? The laughter died. Grickstar's eyes narrowed dangerously. And if I refuse, then I'm going to have to insist. What happened next became legend among the surviving Krekstar crew members. Jake Morrison, alone and unarmed, fought his way through 300 armed pirates in less than an hour. He moved through the ship like a force of nature, never stopping, never slowing down, always advancing. The Krekstar warriors were skilled fighters who had terrorized countless worlds, but they had never faced anything like Jake. He was faster than their quickest warriors, stronger than their heaviest soldiers, and more durable than their thickest armor. When Jake reached the bridge, he found Commander Grickstar waiting with his elite guard. The battle was fierce but brief. When it ended, Jake stood alone among the unconscious forms of the ship's entire command crew. He activated the ship's communication system and contacted the rest of the Krekstar fleet. This is Jake Morrison aboard your flagship. Commander Grickstar has decided to retire from the piracy business. I suggest you all do the same. Find honest work and stop bothering peaceful ships. One by one, The remaining Krekstar vessels powered down their weapons and began broadcasting surrender messages. Jake returned to the Harmonies, edge-wearing Commander Grikstar's ceremonial cloak and carrying the Admiral's weapon as a trophy. When Captain Zixth asked what had happened aboard the dreadnought, Jake simply shrugged. We had a conversation about proper behavior. They decided to see things my way. Dr. Veltar scanned Jake for injuries and found only a few minor scratches. Jake, you just defeated an entire ship full of the most dangerous pirates in the galaxy. They weren't so tough once you got past all the yelling and posturing. Like I said, bullies are the same everywhere. The Krekstar fleet departed the system, within hours leaving behind their flagship as what Jake called an apology gift to the Federation. Word of the incident spread quickly through Federation space, and soon every alien in the galaxy had heard the story of the human who single-handedly defeated 300 pirates, but for Jake Morrison it was just another day helping out his new friends. After Jake's victory over the Krekstar pirates, Dr. Veltar couldn't sleep. The events of the past weeks had shaken everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. He spent long hours in the ship's data archives, searching through historical records about humanity's disappearance. Most of the information was incomplete or contradictory. The Federation's records claimed that humans had simply vanished from known space around 200 years ago, leaving behind empty colonies and abandoned ships. The official explanation was that they had probably destroyed themselves in some kind of civil war, as young species often did, but Dr. Veltar was beginning to suspect that the official explanation was completely wrong. He dug deeper into the archives, looking for older records that might have been overlooked. In the deepest files, he found references to something called the emergency protocols and mentions of a threat so dangerous that most of the information had been classified beyond his security clearance. Computer, search for all references to human military capabilities, he instructed the ship's data system. The results were disturbing. According to the few unclassified reports he could access, human military forces had been involved in dozens of conflicts across the galaxy before their disappearance, but they hadn't been the aggressors. In every case, they had been called in to help other species deal with threats that their own forces couldn't handle. The humans had a reputation as problem solvers. When peaceful negotiations failed and conventional military forces weren't enough, desperate governments had called for human assistance. And the humans had always answered. Dr. Veltar found records of human forces stopping a planet-killing weapon built by a mad scientist on Rigel 7. They had ended a war between two species that had lasted for 3 centuries. They had even managed to negotiate peace with the savage warlords of the Outer Rim, something that had been considered impossible. But the most interesting discovery was a partial record from the Galactic Council's emergency session held just before humanity's disappearance. The file was heavily corrupted, but Dr. Veltar could make out enough to understand the basic situation. Something had been detected approaching from outside the galaxy. Something massive and hostile that was consuming entire star systems as it moved through space. The Council had been in a state of panic, knowing that no Federation force could stand against such a threat. That was when the human ambassador had made an extraordinary offer. Humanity would handle the situation, but all other species had to agree to evacuate to a safe distance while they dealt with the problem. The partial record ended there, but Dr. Veltar could piece together what had happened next. Humanity had left known space not because they were fleeing or because they had been destroyed, but because they had gone to fight something too dangerous for anyone else to face. Dr. Veltar brought his findings to Captain Zixth, who listened with growing amazement as the doctor explained what he had discovered. So you're saying that humans didn't disappear because they were weak, Captain Zixth said slowly. They left to protect the rest of us from something even more dangerous than they were? That's exactly what I'm saying, sir. And if Jake Morrison is truly representative of baseline human capabilities, then we may have grossly underestimated what a fully equipped human military force could accomplish. Captain Zixith called Jake to his ready room and shared Dr. Veltar's discoveries. Jake listened carefully, his expression growing more serious as the captain explained what they had learned. "That matches what I remember from before the colony mission," Jake said when the captain finished. "There were a lot of secret meetings at the highest levels of government. Military forces were being recalled from the frontier. Everyone was talking about some kind of external threat, but the details were classified." "Jake, do you think your people succeeded in dealing with this threat?" Jake considered the question carefully. "Captain, you've spent a month with me and I'm just a construction worker who's been asleep for 2 centuries. What do you think a fully equipped human battle fleet could accomplish when they really put their minds to something?" Before Captain Zixith could answer, Lieutenant Quinda's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Captain, please report to the bridge immediately. We're detecting something unusual on long-range sensors." The 3 of them hurried to the bridge, where they found the crew gathered around the main display screen. Lieutenant Quinda was running sensor sweeps of the space ahead of them, and her skin patterns were flickering with excitement. "Sir, we're picking up massive objects approaching from the galactic rim. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Captain Zixith studied the sensor readings. Dozens of large objects were moving through space at incredible speeds, heading directly for Federation territory. "Can you identify them?" "Not yet, sir. They're still too far away for detailed scans, but whatever they are, they're huge. Some of them are larger than our biggest space stations." Jake stepped up to the sensor console and examined the readings. A slow smile spread across his face. "Those are human ships," he said quietly. "How can you tell?" Dr. Veltar asked. "The engine signatures. I recognize the pattern from the old military vessels that used to patrol Earth space. But these are much bigger than anything we had when I went into cryosleep." As they watched, the approaching objects began to resolve into individual ships. On the sensors, the crew gasped as the true size of the vessels became clear. The smallest ships were larger than Federation cruisers. The largest were bigger than entire cities. "By the stars," Lieutenant Quinda whispered. "How many ships are there?" "I count over 200 vessels in the main formation," Engineer Crixton reported from his station. "And there are more groups approaching from different directions." A communication signal began broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice that came through the speakers was warm and confident, with the same easy strength that Jake displayed. "This is Admiral Katie Sullivan of the Human Defense Fleet. We've completed our mission in the Andromeda region and we're ready to return home. Any Federation vessels in the area, please respond." Captain Zixth activated the communication system with shaking hands. "Admiral Sullivan, this is Captain Zixith of the Federation exploration vessel Harmony's Edge. We have one of your people aboard our ship." "One of our people? That's interesting. Please identify them." Jake stepped forward and activated the microphone. "Hey, Admiral, this is Jake Morrison from the new Frontier Colony mission. I was wondering when you folks were going to come back and check on things." There was a pause, then Admiral Sullivan's voice returned, filled with warmth and amusement. "Jake Morrison? The construction foreman from the Detroit project? What are you doing way out here?" "Long story, Admiral. My colony ship had some problems, and I've been taking a really long nap. These nice Federation folks found me and woke me up." "Well, it's good to hear your voice, Jake. We'll have to catch up properly once we're in dock. How have you been getting along with our galactic neighbors?" Jake glanced around the bridge at the alien crew members who had become his friends. "Oh, they're good people, Admiral. They've been taking real good care of me. I've been helping them out with a few small problems. While waiting for you to get back, small problems. Nothing major. Some pirates were bothering them, so I had a talk with the pirates about their career choices, the usual stuff." Admiral Sullivan's laughter filled the bridge. "That sounds like you, Jake. Well, we're about 6 hours out from Federation space. We'll meet up with you then, and you can tell us all about your adventures." As the communication ended, Captain Zixth H. turned to Jake with something approaching awe. "Jake, how many humans are in that fleet?" "Hard to say without seeing the full roster, but if it's a standard deep space operation, Probably around 2 million military personnel plus support staff. Dr. Veltar's scanner clattered to the floor. 2 million? That's just the combat fleet. Doc, Admiral Sullivan mentioned they were coming back from Andromeda, which means they were dealing with something really serious. For a job that big, they probably took most of our available forces. Lieutenant. Quenda's skin had turned a pale white color. Jake, what exactly did your people go to fight in Andromeda? Jake's expression grew serious. From what the Admiral said, it sounds like they were dealing with the same kind of threat that made us pull back from the colonies 200 years ago. Something that eats entire galaxies. And they won? Well, they're coming home, aren't they? Captain Zix stared out at the approaching human fleet and realized that everything the Federation thought they knew about the galaxy was about to change. They hadn't rescued a lost relic from a dead civilization. They had awakened a member of the most powerful species the universe had ever produced, and now that species was coming home.